A good diet may not be enough to optimize nutritional factors related to mental health. Nobel Prize winner Linus Pauling in 1968 hypothesized that what is probably inherited in mental disorders are genes that regulate brain metabolism of essential nutrients. As a result, some people have a congenital need for more than typical amounts of cofactors for optimal enzymatic activity. As we discussed previously, enzymes combine with cofactors, in other words, vitamins and minerals, result in the transformation of chemical A to chemical B. Polymorphisms in a gene can result in a decreased binding affinity for cofactors, which in turn lowers the reaction rate. Dr. Bruce Ames has hypothesized that adding vitamins at high doses could increase the intracellular cofactor concentration and thereby activate a defective enzyme. In his 2002 paper cited below, he identified that about 50 human genetic diseases due to defective enzymes can be remedied or ameliorated by the administration of high doses of the vitamin component of the corresponding cofactors, which at least partially restores enzymatic activity. Along the same vein, Dr. Eugene Arnold has written about how certain individuals with ADHD benefit from omega-3 supplementation. He says, the high heritability of ADHD is multifactorial, of course, but it seems conceivable that one of the genetic factors, or more precisely, one of the gene by environment interactions, may be vulnerability to long-chain omega-3 deficiency. Is it possible that some individuals with mental disorders also have a vulnerability to micronutrient deficiency because of polymorphisms of various enzymes, and that potentially adding in micronutrients would increase enzymatic activity, resulting in improvement in symptoms? We will examine this hypothesis and research supporting it shortly. I want to take a moment to talk about the RDA, or Recommended Dietary Allowance. The RDAs were initially established during World War II to determine in a time of possible shortage what levels of nutrients would prevent symptomatic nutrient deficiency in most people. And by most people, specifically 97.5% of people, not all people. If 100 people were to get exactly the RDA level of vitamin C, then 2.5 of that 100 could be at a risk for developing scurvy, for example. Additionally, mental health symptoms were not considered when developing RDA values. They were focused mainly on physical ailments. So RDAs may not give us the best picture of what is optimal for mental health. The Institute of Medicine has written that intake at the level of the RDI, or AI, which is adequate intake, would not necessarily be expected to replete individuals previously undernourished, nor would it be adequate for disease states marked by increased requirements. Given the high metabolic needs of the brain, often the first signs of dietary deficiency are psychological. Some individuals are genetically predisposed to require greater amounts of micronutrients for optimal mental functioning, and nutrient intakes at the recommended dietary allowance may be insufficient for some individuals based on polymorphism differences in enzymes, receptors, and other cell organelles. Another problem that compounds the issue of micronutrient insufficiency is that the nutrient density of plants has diminished over the past 50 years. This study looked at the mineral content of 20 fruits and 20 vegetables in the 1980s compared to the 1930s. There were several marked reductions in mineral content. The mineral content of fruits are illustrated in light blue and vegetables in dark blue. There were statistically significant reductions in the levels of calcium, magnesium, copper, and sodium in vegetables, and magnesium, iron, copper, and potassium in fruit. The water content increased significantly, and dry matter decreased significantly in fruit. Well, what might account for these changes? On the environmental front, the use of herbicides and pesticides that diminish essential nutrients in crops through chelation of minerals, an emphasis on high-yield crops at the expense of nutrient density, and even the increase in atmospheric CO2 have all been identified as contributors to the reduced nutrient density of plants. Key points. There is strong worldwide evidence that poor nutrient intake from diet is epidemic in the U.S., is correlated with mental health symptoms, is a risk factor for the subsequent emergence of mental health symptoms. There is strong worldwide evidence that poor nutrient intake from diet, when corrected, results in improved mental health. A good diet may not be enough to optimize nutritional factors related to mental health. What we eat matters for mental health. And most Americans are not consuming sufficient amounts of vitamins and minerals.